Welcome to another episode of Well-Adjusted Mama. I'm your host, Dr. Laura Brayton, and today's guest is Dr. Phyllis Books, speaking on solutions for learning challenged children, including dyslexia. Dr. Phyllis Books is a pioneer in working with the whole body and its role in the learning process. Dr. Books is an author, educator, doctor, and New Thought leader. She is the founder of Books Neural Therapy, a well-documented systemic approach to dissolving dyslexia, ADHD, head traumas, and many chronic health issues. Her book, Reversing Dyslexia, Improving Learning and Behavior Without Drugs, was released in 2013 by Square One Publishing. Another book about her work, House of Miracles, was written by Bernice Dotz. Also in 2013, Dr. Books released the world's first online treatment class for parents, the Dyslexia Reversal System. In 2014, she added online and live classes of BNT for professionals. Her formal education includes an undergraduate degree in education and English from Michigan State University, a master's degree in interpersonal communications from the University of North Texas, and a doctor of chiropractic from Parker University. She has taught and lectured in the U.S., Europe, and Australia. Her alma mater granted her the Outstanding International Alumni Award for her many contributions. Dr. Books has done extensive postgraduate work in family systems, accelerated learning styles, energy medicine, neuroscience, pediatrics, and nutrition. With the last name of Books, she says she is destined to be learning forever. Her treatment success offers encouraging proof that the brain is changeable all the time at every age. Trained in both traditional and energetic healing modalities, Dr. Books combines keen listening and diagnostic skills to help you feel better than ever. She lectures and teaches on activating new potentials and possibilities in children of all ages. For more information, please visit her website at drphyllisbooks.com or booksneurotherapy.com. Welcome, Dr. Books, to the show. I'm so excited to have you on today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, so today's topic, we're going to be focusing on solutions for learning challenged children, and that actually includes dyslexia. And Dr. Books is such an expert in this area, so I'm really thrilled for you to share your passion and wisdom for working with children with these issues. So let's start off with just having you share your personal story of why you were inspired to create a whole system of healing for learning challenged children and adults, and that you've now called the Books Neural Therapy.
Okay, how I got inspired. Well, actually, it truly was inspiration because I never intended to work with kids particularly or to even work in the healing arts. My first degree was in education, and what my love is junior high kids, those awkward, geeky kids. I just love that age group. And I had some of my very best teachers there, and I think it's a really wonderful time to come in and really help open kids up and keep them open. So I grew up in a family of educators, so that was the conversation around the dinner table, was why Johnny can't read, etc. And so I did that for years, and then I have a master's degree in communication, and I started working with big corporations like AT&T on looking where the communication problems were happening. And what I found was the same thing that I found in teaching, is that most people got it, and then there are always a few in the back of the room, or somewhere, that just didn't seem to catch on no matter how I explained things. And my master's was in communication, so I got very sophisticated at all the verbal strategies. And sometimes they just didn't work, and that really puzzled me. And so I was living in New York at the time, and I was on a plane on the way to Spain, and this male voice out of the left side of nowhere said, "So why aren't you a chiropractor?" Oh. Well, 30 years ago, there was no field called neuroscience or brain chemistry, or right. Brain chemistry. And so if I wanted to learn how kids' brains worked and how we're wired, I either was going to be a chiropractor or a neurologist. Those were the only options available. Mm-hmm. And so I studied chiropractic, and so that's how I really learned about the brain and the nervous system. And at the time I went, "You want me to be a what? A chiropractor?" Because it didn't make any sense to me at all why I would be asked, or why that came into my head, but it was one of those signs that you just can't ignore. I tried ignoring it, and things got miserable, so I finally learned it's just easier to listen to the call when it comes. Yeah. So I went to chiropractic school, and then as I came along and got out, it was like I started putting the pieces of the puzzle together. Why, when there's a neurological issue, or why one system isn't communicating well with another system inside the body, of course the communication on the outside isn't clear. Mm-hmm. So when I was a communications consultant, the problem, we always want to make sure the message gets from the sender to the receiver. But what I learned was sometimes why Johnny can't read or why the person in AT&T didn't get the message was there was a communication snafu, but it wasn't in the words. It was going on in the body itself. And the communication breakdown was in the musculoskeletal system not talking to the endocrine system, or one of the systems not talking, and there was no way, what a joke, I was an English teacher, there was no way we were ever going to find the solution to these things through words. Mm-hmm. Because the body doesn't talk in English. It talks in muscle. We can ask questions, but not with words to get the real solutions. And so, I had to learn a whole other language. I had to learn how these systems can break down and how they can be reconnected. And so chiropractic was actually the fabulous way to do the reconnecting without words. It was just done neurologically and removing obstacles so that the communication could happen the way it was supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
And
wow, that's amazing.
So I didn't ask for it. It just came to me. And about the time I was getting ready to graduate, I had another one of those funny messages, which I don't get very often, but when they come, I listen. And and I had this mirage. I saw myself working on children who were lined up from all over the world, and they were badly maimed. And I was working on their heads, and they were lined up. And I sort of got that feeling again, and I went, "You want me to work with kids?" I had teenagers at the time. And, frankly, some days you just want to put them in the freezer until they're 18 because it's not always easy with your own teens. But I went, wow, a pediatric practice. What about, wow, huh? And so, again, I was asked to do something, and it was easier to do. I learned it was easier just to follow the directions. And so then I started putting all these puzzle pieces together, and why the kids weren't learning, and it was miraculous what happened. Just miraculous.
So right out of chiropractic school, this was a second career for you. Like you mentioned, you had teenagers while you were in chiropractic school, which blows my mind because chiropractic school is so intense. I can't even imagine being a mother to teenagers while you went through it.
It was intense. There is no doubt about it. My kids learned. They tested me on anatomy and physiology, and my daughter would say, "You don't have this right. You don't have it yet, Mom," because she had already memorized it. She went through it with me so many times.
But it sounds like once you graduated, you just had such clarity of how you were going to use chiropractic to serve, and it was working with children and on the brain. And were you aware of the dyslexia piece at that point?
I took lots of classes when I was in chiropractic school, and because I wanted to learn so much. And one of the classes that it was the sacral-occipital technique and applied kinesiology, of course, deal with neurological issues and lots of cranial work, and that was intriguing to me. And I did an internship with the only certified craniopath in Texas.
Oh.
Because I'd had this image, now I'd had this picture, like I'm supposed to be working on kids' heads, and I went, wow, I better study with somebody who really knows what they're doing. So I went to the only certified craniopath, and the second day I was working there, he worked on 4 kids' heads in a row, and the kids were all dyslexic, or had learning after that, and I went, oh, this is it. And so he taught me, and he sent me to class, or he said, you want to learn this, go to this people and this, and so he told me all these different classes and stuff to take. So I did. And, and so that first year or so, I graduated, and I knew I'd had a marketing background with that master's in communication, so I knew it was important to have a niche. And, but I didn't ask what the niche was. It sort of came to me. And so I went, all right, that first year I just kept studying everything I could. And so about half of my practice was standard, just regular people. And part of it, I just put out the word that I'm wanting to work with kids. And so I had special ed teachers come in, and I had people who, and I lived in Dallas at the time where there was a chiropractic school, and a lot of interns sent me people once they knew they were dyslexic, they'd send them to me, and so I could work with grown-ups and kids, and I would just have them come in towards the end of the day. I would practice on grown-ups, actually, and I'd say, if you don't mind coming in at the end of the day, I need to learn this technique. Well, they were thrilled because they'd been suffering with dyslexia their whole lives, and they didn't mind coming in at the end of the day and spending an hour and a half with me while I learned the work.
Wow.
They were thrilled. So, so I started out the first year, it took about a year before I started getting the hang of it, and then I just kept exploring along with the patients.
And, that's such a valuable point that you're making that, I also do SOT, sacro-occipital technique, and cranial, and it's a very powerful chiropractic technique that is great for so many different issues, but to learn how to do cranial adjusting is so tedious as a beginner that you just need to get your hands on lots of heads to, it's so subtle. It's tedious isn't the right word, subtle. It's very subtle, and it just requires a lot of practice.
It's a lot of finesse. It requires a lot of finesse because as much as it can help, it can also hinder. And I've been to SOT classes, too, where somebody did it wrong on me, and I was miserable. But thank goodness I had somebody else there to antidote it right away. But I knew from my own experience how it could be done wrong, and I would drive hours, like 7 hours, to this one only certified craniopath in Texas and say, now show me exactly where to put my hands. Yeah. And so now I've developed, we'll talk about that later, how I train people to do it, including parents, and how I say practice on adults before you practice on your kids. You don't want to wear them out before you know what you're doing.
Right. That makes so much sense to me.
Yeah.
So that kind of brings me to my next question now. So you are in practice, you're working on adults, you're seeing some improvements with dyslexia, and now you've actually create your own technique called Books Neural Therapy. So can you just kind of elaborate on what that is and how it works?
Sure. Books Neural Therapy is actually a lot of different techniques, but primarily, for those who understand chiropractic, it's a lot of applied kinesiology and a lot of SOT, sacro-occipital technique, because those both include cranial work and they include muscle testing, and they understand that the body has several systems. It's not just I have a problem at the atlas and I'm going to adjust that. That atlas is actually incredibly important in this work, incredibly.
Which is, by the way, the top vertebrae in the neck.
Yes, and there are whole chiropractic techniques that only deal with the first and second vertebra in the neck because it influences so many things. But I forgot my point. Can you remind me?
You're explaining what Books Neural Therapy is.
Oh, yeah. So it combines, so it has a big background in those two techniques. And then I've studied lots of other techniques, and so I kept adding other things. I did network spinal analysis and bioenergetic synchronization and activator and lots of things. So, but they're all non-force techniques, primarily because when I'm working with kids, the last thing you want to do is do anything that's scary to them. And, so sometimes the work takes a little longer, but there's no way any kid would be scared, because one of the premises in dyslexia and other things is there's many times some amount of trauma, whether it's self-perceived, the child felt ashamed or embarrassed or whatever, shut down. And so a big part of what we do is build up trust and rapport from body to body and person to person. So I'm going to do things as gently and as effectively as I can. So it's mostly these non-force techniques. And so that's and then we start with the body itself, the basic organizing principles of the body. And if somebody didn't crawl correctly, or if they skip crawling, as my mother said to me once I got into this work, you only crawled for a week. And I went, that explains so much of me. But I didn't, it's one of those things, how would I know except my mom was a teacher, and I shared a lot of my reading stuff with her. But we look at basic neurological. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, for maybe we have a lot of new moms listening in who maybe have a young child who is, at that stage learning how to crawl. Can you just elaborate on why crawling is so important for brain function?
Absolutely. When babies come out, the first thing they do is army crawl, like at 3 or 4 months of age. They start using their upper body, their elbows and stuff, kind of pull themselves along. And then they go to one side. We call it homolateral gait, but they'll start reaching more on one side and then the other side. And then, 6 to 9 months, they start crawling. So then why this is so important for reading eventually is their eye follows their hand. So as their left hand goes forward, their eye goes to the left. And then they reach with their right hand and the eye goes to the right. And normally, as that happens, the left hand and the right foot are crawling together, and then the opposite. And so that movement is engaging the whole body, the upper part of the body and the lower part of the body. And so it's requiring a coordination and a communication between the upper and the body and opposite sides, and it's crossing the midline. And so the eyes have to learn to go back and forth. And when you don't crawl very long, you don't get that practice, that repetitive practice of the eyes going left to right, to left to right, to left to right. And that tracking and teaming takes a lot of practice, and kids don't read right away, but that tracking stuff starts getting put in right away. So that's why crawling is so important.
Because it actually helps with reading comprehension and other, brain functions as a child gets older. Absolutely. Yeah. And a little bit with balance too. And we work a lot with the vestibular system. So as kids go from sitting to standing, we know those stages involve a new curve in the spine, in the neck, and in the spine. And as they walk, they're interacting with their environment, and that's really important too for gathering sensory data, so the kids can tell where they are in time and space, and how far something is near far, and so on, which teaches them eventually how close to get to another person and how not, reading people's space, which in the Asperger's and autism world is not very well acknowledged. It isn't played out very well. But kids are learning a lot by those really early things, and they're very important to let. And for kids, another thing for reading is that they play with roly-poly bugs, and that they play outside, and that their eyes go from near to far, that they look far into the distance, and then they look close up, and then they look far into the distance and soften their gaze, and then they look close. They don't need to be on screen time at 2 and 3 years old, because that focuses their eyes way too much, way too long. And the look near, and there's none of the far looking.
Right. So it's really important too for reading. And neurologically, it's actually correct that children learn to read around the age of 8. That's when the muscles and the neurological wiring is ideal. Okay. And in America now,
a lot of kids learning how to read a lot earlier now.
Oh, and so they're starting now in kindergarten, and so kids start feeling embarrassed and bad about themselves if they're not reading when they're 5 years old, when that's not the way we're designed anyway. In China, they started having kids read at the age of 3, and I think it's like 80 or 90%. It's ridiculous how many kids are wearing eyeglasses by the age of 5.
Oh, wow.
Because they're spending all that time with their eyes looking just straight ahead of them on the book or on the screen. They're not exercising all the eye muscles. They're not looking near far. They're not playing. They're focused way too much. And that also, when you focus like that, it puts you into a certain part of the brain that deals with anxiety and fear. It deals with fight or flight. And so it puts you in a fight or flight state, which is not where kids need to be.
Yeah, it's not good for any of us, for sure. Wow, and so if they're getting hardwired at a young age, then we could just see how that might even persist through adulthood and their career and just all the stresses that we have as adults.
Absolutely, because I work with adults now too, because they've had dyslexia. It's just that nobody talked about dyslexia. Nobody said much about it until, it wasn't even in the dictionary, I think, until 1960. Yeah, because it's not, because in people my age, you just didn't talk about it, or you found something else you were good at. Nobody wants to talk about the things they're terrible at.
Right. Right. So if you had difficulty reading, you would find a career where you didn't have to read.
Exactly. Or you get very clever. Like my father, in retrospect, was dyslexic, and he married a school teacher. How very clever of him, because she did all his reading for him.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a successful dyslexic. So they figure out a way around something, but not everybody's that clever. And so a lot of people, I work with some adults too. I just had a guy from the post office, and dyslexia isn't just reading. There are lots of other issues that come along with it. And so he got denied promotions and lots of things because his processing speed is a little bit slower. It doesn't mean he doesn't do the work and do it quite accurately. It's just there's a little delayed response. And in this country, there's an amazing statistic. In 2010, there was a Roper poll that said in America, 80% of Americans equate dyslexia with mental retardation.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that scary? That's recent. And because there's this like delay, this split-second delay in reading or in listening, or somebody answers a question just after everybody else has, because there was a little processing lag. And people do this stereotype thing, they're slow. They generalize it to they're slow in the head.
Right.
Which isn't
have
true.
Some sort of mental retardation, but it's not related to being mentally retarded. It's related to how they process. I say dyslexia is really timing and synchronization issues. Mm-hmm. Timing is, my other big thing is dyslexia is not permanent, like the definitions say. The international definition of dyslexia is that it's neurological. They used to say they didn't know the origin of it, but now they pretty much say it's neurologic and so on. They used to just say unknown etiology. And that it has to deal with processing of words. That's part of it. That's the tip of the iceberg, actually. And here's the kicker, is they say it's permanent. That's in the definition. Mm-hmm. So people think, and that's mainstream. But with all the new information we have in neuroscience and brain chemistry, and you can see with these fancy MRIs, fMRIs, and SPECT scans, you can see how the brain is changing. Here's what Johnny looked like before. You do some intervention, and here's how Johnny's brain looks now. It changes. Yeah.
But that's new information for most people in the educator world.
Right. So your technique is using very gentle, non-force, chiropractic type, techniques, mm-hmm. where you're putting your hands on the child's head. You're also, I'm assuming, maybe working on their spine as well?
Yes, I actually start at the feet, because the proprioception, or how they gather information from the way their foot touches the ground, sends a lot of information to the brain, a lot of very important information. And so I actually start at the feet. I look at the arch of the foot. I want to see how it strikes the ground, because that's going to affect how their brain perceives where they are in the environment.
That's fascinating.
I actually started... it's and here's another little fascinating thing. Kids who toe walk after the age of 4 are oftentimes stutterers. And I'll see people in their 20s, and I'll say, did you ever stutter when you were a kid, or did you ever toe walk? And they said, I still toe walk. Mm-hmm. Because that deals with, it inhibits speech when you toe walk.
I had a 6-year-old in my office today for his initial evaluation who's been toe walking his entire life. Mm-hmm. And I'm really excited to do chiropractic with him, because I know there's a lot of meningeal tension that needs to be released, which is what chiropractic is excellent at doing.
Well, that's the Achilles tendon that's involved there, and the Achilles tendon is too tight. And that's, at the back of the heel going up there, it's too tight. And the body reads that as getting ready to run. When that Achilles tendon is tight, the body says, I have to survive at all costs. Survival always wins. And so it's tight. I must have to run. So you don't run and speak at the same time if your life is at stake.
Right.
Yeah. So just soothing that Achilles tendon can help a lot with speech issues. And on autistic kids, I do that all the time, and I teach moms to do it, is because that's an important nonverbal clue that it's places where those systems break down, and having to read how one system is affecting another, that actually, who would think that rubbing the Achilles tendon would help kids with their speech?
Right. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, though, from, once again, that neurological SOT perspective that we were talking about. So besides dyslexia, what other diagnoses have you been successful at treating with Books Neurotherapy?
Oh, well, ADHD is another common one. And anytime kids have had a blow to the head or to the tailbone, whether it's a traumatic brain injury or a concussion, or you don't actually have to be knocked unconscious to have a concussion. You know, if you look at teenage and athletes and so on, they can have concussions without being knocked out. So anyhow, that affects the brain and its function, the timing issues, big time. I also work with TMJ, which is the jaw joint. There's always a relationship between the jaw and learning problems. Because there are structural imbalances in the body that end up not only, form and function go together, but the more symmetrical the body is, if you're a weightlifter, the more weight you can lift. If you're a runner, the faster you can run, and so on. So the body has to be perfectly symmetrical, and when it's not, it's going to affect many things, including how well you do in school. So
you also mentioned autism.
Yes, I don't say that's my primary focus, but there is a neurological component to a lot of these diagnoses. And so the neurological part, we can play, as chiropractors, we can help a lot because we can relieve the tension coming with the meninges and on the spine itself that's inhibiting the information going to the right place.
Right.
So
sensory processing issues.
Right. Asperger's I've a really good success with. That's a milder form or different kinds. And I do have success with autism. It's just that I have to do a lot more work with nutrition in the gut. When we're working with autism. Yes. And sometimes vaccinations and allergy work. Because I see you do the allergy elimination technique as I do too, and sometimes back and trying to clear as much as we can if there's been traumas from the vaccines. Sometimes that's just the straw that broke the camel's back for kids. And so, we want to work to help that too.
That's right. And so that's actually a good point that you're making here. So with the work you're doing, it's very individual. So with maybe more of a severe cases of a child who's, let's say, nonverbal, then they're going to need more than just the neurological hands-on therapy. They're going to need dietary changes. They're going to need supplements to help heal their gut. NEET, which is an allergy elimination technique. So there's multiple modalities that are brought in to help the child support in detoxing and healing, it's not just a one treatment type
Absolutely. It's not just one treatment. It's not just one modality. Because one thing affects the other, and people, so many times I get dads asking for the double-blind studies, and I'm going, that's so hard to do on a human being, especially if there's an allergy and they ate chocolate or sugar one day. It's going to affect their performance, their handwriting. It's going to affect their ability to read. It's going to affect their ability to retain information. And there are so many variables that play like that it's hard to do, quote, double-blind studies. But the allergy work, if you do it too, it can have an immense effect, especially in the ADHD world, oh my gosh, on kids' ability to focus and concentrate. And so I think we have to take all those factors into account. We have to look at the emotional well-being. We have to look at what their coping strategies are, and sometimes use EFT, emotional freedom technique, or NET, which is a chiropractic version, sort of, to help them clear out, any emotional patterns that they have from that last math teacher who was terrible. So it's not math per se that's terrible, but that teacher is getting in the way of their learning future math.
So, Dr. Books, you do all of these different modalities in your office?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, you've been in school for a while. You've studied so many different techniques.
I've been doing this for 30 years.
Yeah, but what I love is you're not just doing the same thing for 30 years. You've obviously been a student yourself, just learning so many different other techniques to bring into your practice.
Well, I'm always looking at what else I can do to help the kids.
Yeah.
That's always, and the world is changing. You know, the world is just more toxic. Kids don't have as strong immune systems as they had 30 years ago. And so we have to go in and address the problem where it is.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
So I know that you've written a book called Reversing Dyslexia, Improving Learning and Behavior Without Drugs. So first of all, I want parents listening to know that this exists, that this is possible. Like you mentioned, dyslexia is not permanent, even though the dictionary says it is. So what can you share with parents who do have a dyslexic child of what they can learn from reading your book?
Well, in the book, I have several chapters on exercise and music and play, because not everybody could benefit from the work. Not everybody can afford to or can find a practitioner in their area. So I'll say you can do these things for sure. And you make sure that your kid gets a lot of exercise, and you want to use those across the body movements, like the cross crawl for grown-ups. So that would be like swimming. Swimming is an excellent exercise for kids, and they think it's fun. But they're actually really, so it's sports, but anything the kids will actually do. Martial arts is great because it teaches them it's sort of an inner focus and an inner control, no matter what's going on around you too, that you've got a power inside of you that you can control. Mm-hmm. So I do a lot with exercise, and I do a lot with music, because piano, for instance, really, really works on both coordinating the right and the left side of the brain. When my daughter said she can watch my grandson, she said you can almost see the brain knitting itself together, expanding when she watches her son play the piano. Mm. And so whether it's piano or whether it's drums or guitar, drums is great because there's a lot of rhythm. And rhythm, it used to be that kids' sense of rhythm isn't what it used to be. If you ask kids to clap in rhythm with the music now, they're not nearly as likely to do it in general as they did 50 years ago. Yeah, because we don't do nursery rhymes with them like we used to, but they need that auditory, that rhythm for reading, because there's a lot of rhythm involved in reading. So I do a lot with music, and then a lot doing things together as a family, reading with your child, looking at nutrition, cutting out sugar, some simple, obvious things, but those lifestyle patterns are huge for the kids. And I say to parents, over, the 30 years, I watch the kids who make it through, and the kids who suffer and end up in places, sometimes in jail, sometimes not doing well. It's if they've actually got a consistent support system at home. If the child feels loved, that somebody actually cares about him in a consistent way, that's, as a parent, the most important thing you can do for your child, is have that consistent love for them.
Yeah.
And, yeah. And I'm coming out with a workbook. I'm working on it right now. It's going to be a workbook that goes along with that, Reversing Dyslexia. So it's got questions and exercises and things so that parents can do more and more on their own.
And people can get this book on Amazon?
You bet.
Yeah. Cool. And that's great that the workbook's coming out soon. So, this is something that's accessible to any family. And, I think that makes so much sense that in general for children, for any type of health, is really looking at lifestyle. So moving away from that sedentary playing video games where visually you're looking only close up, which you mentioned how that impacts brain function. But then you're not moving your body. Every joint in your body is just sedentary. So movement is so important. And, probably even things like soccer. I mean, there's some cross crawl with that type of work too. So just running, things like that are just going to help.
Right. Anything the kid likes to do. As grown-ups, people say, what exercise should I do? And I look at them in the eye and go, the one you'll actually do.
Yeah, right?
it doesn't matter so much if it's the most wonderful thing and you don't do it. It doesn't do anybody any good. Mm-hmm. So whatever it is that you find pleasure doing.
Right. Dancing. That could be a fun one for adults and for children.
Oh, dancing is great for kids. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And when you mentioned music for the therapy, was that just specifically playing a musical instrument, or how about listening to music?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that, because I often suggest people go to a website called Advanced Brain Technologies, ABT, Advanced Brain Technologies, and there you can, for like $25 a month, they will create music for your child's particular learning issues.
Oh.
And then you listen with headphones, binaural headphones, 15 minutes twice a day, and it sort of wakes up the ears. So it wakes up. It helps with spelling, and it helps with just keeping the brain awake. And so it's something that parents can easily, if you can't come see me or can't find someone, at least you can go do that. You can do something for yourself and for your kids. And sometimes people sign up for a few months. They have lifetime things because they have grown-up version for brain boosters and sleep. You know, people have trouble sleeping and so on. So, but it's all done through music and listening.
So cool. I'm so glad you shared that resource, Advanced Brain Technologies.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. I've never heard of that.
The guy who is Alex Dolman, and he comes from the lineage of Dolman and Delicato, who were, they worked with brain-injured children at least 50 years ago, and they developed the first cross-crawl stuff. They had the kids wearing a patch over one eye and cross-crawling on the floor when they were 12 and 15 years old still.
Sure.
So he comes from that learning lineage from a long time ago.
Oh, that's so cool. And, you know, that's another thing that, you know, I have some families do with kids that didn't crawl, and now they're, they're 7, 8, 9 years old, or you mentioned even 12, 15, and actually just getting on the floor and crawling is such a powerful exercise for that communication between the right and left hemisphere of the brain. What about brain gym exercises? Is that something that you ever recommend for kids? I know it's good for adults.
Absolutely. I'm on the board of Brain Gym too, and I love brain gym exercises. Again, if you can't see me or a chiropractor who's trained in some of this, you can study Brain Gym. That's for lay people, and you can learn that anywhere in the world. Mm-hmm. And so they have exercises, 26 exercises for the kids, and it'll tell you which exercise is good for what parts of learning. Mm-hmm. And so those are great, and those help a lot of people. And when I do my work, the kids always get brain exercises, but it's a lot of Brain Gym and some other things to reinforce what I've done in the office. Once I've opened up the correct neurological pathway, then they do cross-crawl, and they do all these other things for several, for like 100 repetitions a day, because now we need to make the speed of the transmission across the nerves faster and more automatic. And the way we do that is through those brain exercises.
Cool. So that's another great resource for parents to know about.
Yes, Brain Gym.
So I'd love for you to actually share like a case study from your practice of a child that you've helped with your work.
Yeah, I was thinking, sure. I can tell you a lot, but I'm thinking of one who was 14 when he came to see me, and he was reading at a second grade level.
Oh.
And his parents actually sued the school system, and the school made them sign a gag clause, and they paid for another $15,000 worth of private tutoring for him, but he couldn't. But they refused to put the kid on drugs, on Ritalin or other things, and they wanted natural solutions. So, and with that, he temporarily went up to third grade and then regressed back to second grade again.
So even with all that additional tutoring, it wasn't fixing the problem.
Right. It was only addressing a part of the problem. It wasn't addressing the whole thing. So, cause they were doing like ear training stuff. Well, the ear is important, but it has to be hooked up with the visual and with the motor system and everything. So, when I came to I was in California, and I worked on the child, and his father happened to be a sculptor, a pretty well-known sculptor, and I looked at the kid's face and I said, if this were a sculpture, would you consider it finished? Because I said, look at how this eyebrow is higher and this cheek is going forward, and he went, no, I wouldn't actually. And so in this child's case, it was actually a birth trauma.
Yeah.
And I'd said to the mom, I was doing cranial work, so I was working very gently around the bones on the skull.
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, I heard horses' hoofs pounding, and I went, well, what is that? And so I said to the mom, tell me about the birth. Was it an easy birth? And she went, oh, it was terrible. 19 hours of hard labor. And I went, oh, that's that horse's hoof sound I was hearing. So it was that hard labor. So we know that when a child is close to being born, the last time that the left side, the eyes, or the left side of the head is the most common exit. We call it anterior, or it's left anterior. So the head. So anyhow, the left side of the skull is pushing against mom's pubic bone, or pelvic area. And so for this kid, for 19 hours, his head was smashing against her bones. And I can't remember. I think he came out pretty white. I don't think his APGAR score was so good because he was traumatized in the birth process. So when I could release that tension and release the whole trauma from his birth, he went from being a pimply-faced white kid to, like, his muscle tone changed, and he was more athletic looking, and his coloring was good, and he could read. So within a few hours, took about 8 to 10 hours worth of work with him, which is about typical, and then he was reading like he read all his life.
Oh, my goodness. Now, you said 8 to 10 hours, so is that done, is it an hour per session, or how long are you doing per session?
I usually do 30 minutes. However, I have a lot of people fly in to see me, and they come and spend a week with me. And so then I work with them off and on during the day. So it's about 18 to 20 sessions, but that's about 8 to 10 hours of work. It boils down to 8 to 10 hours of hands-on time.
Right, and then after that, he was able to do, like, the exercises that you had recommended to kind of maintain all of the work that you had done to open up the nerve channels. Right.
Then he just did that to maintain. And in his case, the part I think is interesting is we never really know what somebody's, not reason to be, but what his real talent was. We just know that he couldn't read very well.
Right.
And his mom said when he was about 7, he used to draw a lot, and he did these intricate drawings and stuff, like, with more skill and artistic ability than a little kid usually has. But she said by the age of 7, he just put down his color crayons and he just stopped drawing because school was so hard.
Oh. And obviously his family is artistic, and he has that probably in his nature, but yet...
Right, but he just shut down.
Oh, wow.
And so when we finished working, he took up sculpture like his dad. Oh. And before long, he was outselling his dad at shows. By the time he was 16, he owned outright 3 trucks, 3 pickups and stuff, because he was doing great. So he could read, but that really wasn't his big thing. Right. And he'd been in special ed all of his life, and now the social dilemma he was going through was all of his friends were dyslexic too, and now he could read, so was he going to disband his friends, or what was he going to do socially? So there's a different set of issues, but the really thing was, so he reads, he can read, but his real thing was he got his art back.
Right.
He got his creativity back. And so I say for each child who comes in, yes, I want you to be able to read well enough to get along in the world, or to do math well enough that you'd have to sort of change. But I really want is to uncover your particular genius. Yeah. What it is that you're really here to do.
That's beautiful. I mean, it's so true, too. Like we were saying, like you don't have to be excellent at reading if you're going to be a sculptor, for example, but you do need to be able to read to, at a basic level, to, be a functioning adult and a fully functioning adult. So that's such a great case study for you to point out. Like it's so much more than just being able to read at the appropriate age level. It really actually impacted his social life and his career.
Yes.
Wow.
And his career now, he does a heavy metal he owns great big Caterpillars and big heavy equipment. Mm-hmm. And he thinks he's playing all day long. He gets to play in the dirt. And he's a very successful businessman.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And you know what? You had, before we started recording this call, you had mentioned that you are now, part of your practice has actually shifted to successful entrepreneurs. And I thought that was really fascinating. You were telling me 1 in 3 entrepreneurs are dyslexic.
Yes. I mean, who knew? But they're self-proclaimed. A questionnaire was set out, I think it was in London in 2007, and 1 out of 3 said that they were dyslexic. And 70% of entrepreneurs are ADHD. So it's a huge population. And when you don't, when you can keep your self-esteem, which is a big issue, when you're learning differently from other people, it's hard not to judge yourself. But for those people who make it through and decide that they're learning differently and they've got special talents that those average kids, ordinary kids don't have, then you have the Richard Bransons and the Charles Schwab and the actors and actresses who've worked around it, and they've learned how to delegate and how to get along with people really well because they know they can't do everything themselves. So their people skills are really important. Mm-hmm. And they can become, very successful if their self-esteem is intact. Mm. The most common thing that kids, when the common age I would say is around 8 or 9, when moms say to me, he's not feeling good about himself, he's really feeling different, I can see his self-esteem going in the toilet. Mm. And I'll go, that's more important to me than anything. That's the part we have to work on.
Yeah,
because if their self-esteem is intact, they can climb mountains. They don't care how hard it is. But if they don't feel good about themselves and they don't think they're worthwhile and they don't think it's worth trying, they can be the brightest kid in the world and they won't try.
Yeah, that's so true. So I think that is such a good note to end on, is just, as parents and as practitioners, that's really, I think, our responsibility to the next generation is to help them, not to have them feel entitled, but to actually help them have a healthy self-esteem so that, they know their self-worth and their self-love. And I think that's so important.
You are right on. Right on. Mm-hmm. I wish I knew all that when I was your age.
Dr. Books, if people... Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, over 30 years, I've just watched what works and what doesn't with kids. And so I try to do the things that work in that self-esteem. I didn't even realize how important that was when we started, but I sure know it now.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. So if parents listening want to get more information about your work or make an appointment, you're located in Austin, Texas, how can they find you? And if they're not in the Austin, Texas area, how can they find a practitioner in their area who does this type of work?
Okay, well, my website is my name, drphyllisbooks.com. So it's DR, and then Phyllis, Phyllis, and books like books you read, which is a joke since I work with people who don't like to read, BOOKS.com. Uh-huh. Or you can go to booksneuraltherapy.com, and that's neural is NEURAL, therapy.com. Mm-hmm. And my phone number is 512-331-0668. And, or you can just email me at phyllisbooks@gmail.com. It's easy. And for finding practitioners, I've just been organizing the material so that I can be teaching other practitioners around the country and around the world. So there aren't people trained at this point, but if you have a chiropractor or someone that you care about, I would encourage you to encourage them to take the class so that you can have some help locally. And in the meantime, if you're desperate or wanting something, as I said, people fly in to see me a lot. Mm-hmm. And normally I spend like 2 to 10 weeks with kids, but when you fly in from a long distance, I do the bulk of the work in 5 days. So that people can come
for a whole week.
For a short, so people can come for a short time, and then you have to keep doing your brain exercises and keep doing the other things for everything to integrate. But I can make the shift in the neurology.
Mm.
So
that's so good for people to know that that's out there, that's possible.
It is. I have people come in, literally from all over the country and all over the world, because they they just didn't know that there was help, and when they know it, they want to do something. They want to do the best for their kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's just so beautiful. I'm so glad that I got to have you on the podcast today to share hope for parents that may have children that are having, challenges with reading and other learning comprehension, and that there is really effective drug-free ways to help make a change.
Yes. Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for asking me to come talk to moms.